Is he strong? Listen, bud. He's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Welcome fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward to him. Life is a great big day. Wherever there's a hang, you'll find a Spider-Man.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Storytime with Spidey. It's me, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and check it out, new suit. Always looking to upgrade and update, and I know some of you have been missing me, but I'm never going to be gone for long. So let's see, we're going back to this collection here, the 5-minute Marvel stories, and let's see, last time I told you about the time I met Miles Morales and when he ended up becoming like me. Now, see, Miles didn't make the mistakes that I made when I first got my powers. He always knew that with great power comes great responsibility. At least he understood that he needed to do some good with it. I was not so wise starting out, so I respect him for that. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about some of my other friends, the Guardians of the Galaxy. They travel around in space and get into all kinds of trouble. And sometimes, if they're lucky, they manage to do some good. So, here we go. On a quiet night in the galaxy, the Guardians were gathered in the Milano, waiting for their next big mission. Just then, the ship's incoming message light began to blink. The Guardians all huddled over the light. "Oh boy," Rocket said. "Nebula has stolen a device from Nova Corps, and they need our help." Now, Nebula keeps jumping back and forth between being good and being bad. It's hard for her to decide what she wants to do. Gamora was thinking about her adoptive sister, Nebula. She couldn't help but think about their history and the sibling rivalry that started early in their lives. That's kind of like if you have a brother or a sister and you kind of butt heads a lot, like you're competing to be the star of the family. A lot of us do it. As young girls, Gamora and Nebula had been taken in by the most feared supervillain in the universe, Thanos. None of us like him. Thanos had been a harsh parent to Gamora and Nebula. To inspire competition between the two, he forced them to fight each other over and over again. Gamora ran away from her evil family in search of something better. She joined Star-Lord on his adventures, but she often wished Nebula would have joined them too. And so here we see Nebula thinking about her times with, or Gamora thinking about her times with Nebula. And here we see the family. Sometimes a person can be your family and still not be good to you. The Guardians sprang into action. Gamora guided Rocket and Star-Lord as they flew to Milano, chasing after Nebula. Gamora knew she couldn't let Nebula get away. They flew through the galaxy, following Gamora's lead. They landed on Morag, that's a planet, and Star-Lord was skeptical. But Gamora had a feeling. Skeptical kind of means you're not sure. Like, he wasn't sure that this was the right place. "If this is where you're hiding," Gamora muttered as they landed, "then I'll find you." And here we see the Guardians springing into action. You see, the Guardians, much like the Avengers, are a team. They work together to get the job done. She'd caught Nebula stealing in the past, and had learned that she was wired into a whole underground network for black market goods, linked by the subterranean tunnels of Morag. Gamora ran ahead of the rest of the Guardians. She navigated the streets until she spotted an old wooden door with strange markings etched into it. She descended into a creaky staircase into the darkness below. Soon Gamora heard a low voice in the distance. Up ahead, she saw a shaft. She saw, a shaft of light where the tunnel ended, leading into a large room. She slowly crept toward the entrance. "Is someone there?" Nebula's voice rang out. "Why don't you quit stalking in the shadows and reveal yourself?" Busted! Gamora entered the room to find Nebula standing in a corner, holding a strange-looking device. It was round and covered with dials and buttons. Gamora thought it must be some kind of weapon. And here we have Gamora looking for Nebula, and here we have Gamora finding Nebula. Because as we said, she could not let her escape. "Ah, Gamora," Nebula said. "What a very unpleasant surprise." Gamora rolled her eyes. I'm rolling mine too, but you can't see it. "Time's up, sister of mine," she snarled as she lunged at Nebula. But Nebula pressed a button on the device she was holding and Gamora froze. In horror, Gamora watched her arm lower itself and drop her sword. Gamora was powerless to respond. Nebula seemed to be controlling her body with the device. "Oh. Clever, isn't it?" Nebula said. "They're doing all sorts of wonderful things with technology at Noble Corps these days. Imagine all the trouble I can cause now." This very much seems like the kind of thing that a troublemaker like Nebula shouldn't get a hold of. Suddenly, Star-Lord burst into the room. "Not so fast. When you mess with Gamora, you mess with all of us. That's what being a team means." Rocket ran in behind Star-Lord, holding a giant cannon. Then Drax came in. He looked over at Gamora and said, "Why is she just standing there?" "Hey there, Iggy. Nice of you to drop by." "Groot!" A deep voice boomed out. Pretty sure we know who that is. Groot lumbered through the doorway. "No, pal," Rocket said. "I don't think she turned into a tree." "Okay," Star-Lord said to Nebula. "We can do this the easy way or the fun way." Nebula grinned. "Let's have some fun, shall we?" And so here we see the Guardians coming in to save the day. And the rest of the Guardians. Of course, it wouldn't be a Guardians of the Galaxy story without Groot. Just then, Nebula pressed a button on the device and thrust it in the Guardians' direction. The whole team froze where they were. Nebula turned her back to the Guardians, and because she was distracted, Rocket managed to free his hand. He shot his cannon, destroying the Nova Corps device. With the device shattered, the Guardians were released from Nebula's hold. The Guardians flexed their limbs as they regained control of their bodies. Gamora picked up her sword and turned to face Nebula, but her sister was already on the move. The Guardians followed Nebula into the tunnels. Gamora was the first to catch up with her sister. Sounds to me like she wanted it the most. I think so. Here you can see everything that I've just talked about. "You want us to hang back while you take her?" Star-Lord asked Gamora as the Guardians caught up. Gamora had learned that family didn't just mean being raised together, but being there for each other. That's a very important thing to know. Her real family was standing right in front of her, and she needed their help to defeat her adopted sister. She shook her head. "No," she said. "We're a team. Let's do this together." She already learned what happened when she tried to do things on her own. The team nodded at Gamora as they headed toward Nebula. With some help from Drax and the rest of the team, Gamora propelled toward Nebula and knocked her off her feet. As some people would say, teamwork makes the dream work. Kind of like how I had to learn to work together with Miles, even though I'm used to doing things by myself. The Guardians watched as Gamora handcuffed Nebula. "Now you're the one who can't move, sister," she said smugly. Gamora turned to the Guardians. "You know, we're not just a team. You guys are also my family." "I am Groot," Groot said proudly. Rocket muttered, "You're right. This is one weird, dysfunctional family." Gamora laughed. "I wouldn't have it any other way." That was a good lesson for Gamora to learn. And sometimes family is the one that you choose. The people that you choose to be close to. The people that come into your life later on. Now, that doesn't always mean that the family that you grow up with doesn't love you, but sometimes things turn out a little bit differently than we expect. Just like me. You know, I had parents, but when I lost them, my Uncle Ben and Aunt May stepped in and took care of me. And so they really became the parents for me. And even though that wasn't the way most people would expect things to go, I worked with what I had. And I loved my Aunt May, and I loved my Uncle Ben. So I'm kind of happy that I had them. Well, that's all the time we have for now. Tune in next time, which, to be honest, I'm not quite sure when that'll be. But I will be in touch. So until then, Excelsior!
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen up, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Welcome fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward to him. Life is a great big bang. Wherever there's a hang, you'll find a Spider-Man.